Morning, LBC Radio. This is Corey Rosen with the story. Today I have a special guest, Mr. Wally Calderon. Originally from Green Bay, Wisconsin, Wally Calderon earned his BFA in musical theater performance and direction from Ohio Northern University. For over 15 years, Wally traveled the country as a freelance performer, director, and choreographer. Notable stays include the Miracle Theater in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, the Palace Theater in Manchester, New Hampshire, Hershey Park, and the highly credited Stagedoor Manor in upstate New York. Wally moved to Lancaster in 2012, where he spent 5 amazing years holding multiple positions at Sight and Sound theaters. He considers it an honor and a blessing to be in his 5th year as artistic director of Servant Stage Company and to be a part of his community that is so supportive of the arts here in Lancaster. Special thanks to my wonderful wife, Andrea, and his two sweetest daughters, Joyanna and Juliet. All glory to God for the amazing gifts and opportunities he has given me. Psalms 149:3. With all that said, Mr. Wally, how are you doing today?
Great, great. That sounded great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, what inspired you, coming from Green Bay, Wisconsin? What got you into the whole, uh, I want to do music, I want to do theater? What started that for you?
Yeah, as a kid, I don't know, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't,
Mm.
I think when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a veterinarian or something like that. I don't know. I had cats. I wanted to. I loved sports.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up playing sports actually. So I didn't do theater as a kid, like a lot of Lancaster, teens and kids
Right.
do. They have so many opportunities. I was nowhere near that. Um, but we always had music in the home. My family was involved in the arts. My mother taught elementary music for many, many, many years
Mm.
in the Green Bay area public schools. So there was always music. There was always the arts in our house. So I was in the Green Bay Boys Choir as a young boy for a few years. So I always enjoyed it, but I don't think I ever connected and thought this is what I'm going to do. And again, my time was pretty much taken up by sports. I played baseball as much as I could, and just loved everything about sports. Being from Wisconsin, you kind of have to be.
Right. Yeah.
In Green Bay, you have to. It's a birthright
Mm.
to follow the Packers. But I remember being in around probably sixth or seventh or eighth grade, and every year we would walk to the high school and we would see their musical.
Mm.
And my middle brother Ben was taking part in the musical at the time. He was in high school, and they were doing West Side Story, and he was playing Baby John. And I remember walking to the school and being very excited to see him play this role. And I remember sitting in the seats and just being blown away by him, so proud of him, and he was just like a star. And the whole production was so much fun. Such a great story. It's a great one of those great first shows to see. And I don't know that was
Mm.
the first show I ever saw, but I just remember seeing it and being riveted by it, and saying, I want to do that. And I don't know that I even meant I want to do that for my life, but I just wanted to be in high school and be in the musical. And so, fast forward to high school, and I did the musicals, and I thought it was so fantastic, and really started to learn about what it took to put on the shows. And again, I still don't think I had in my mind what I was going to do when I grew up.
Mm.
I had a mentor, one of the instructors in high school, who kind of pulled me aside one day, and he's like, you could do this if you wanted to. And I didn't really know what he meant, but it felt good,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of took that to heart and maybe talked to more people, and then I was getting ready to graduate high school and looking at colleges, and I kind of just stumbled into this career path, or this as a major in college. Um, so again, I didn't come into college or even into the industry with a tremendous amount of experience.
Mm.
I had the heart and the drive at that point, and I thought this is something I want to do, and I really, really enjoy it, but I don't know if I want to perform or what part of theater I want to do. Um, so I remember getting to college, and I remember going to dance class, or the classes, and hearing these other students say, "I've been, I've been in 20 shows, or I've taken 12 years of dance experience," and I'm going, this is my first dance class. This is, I've only done like 4 shows once a year in high school. And so it was a bit intimidating, but then it kind of just took off from there. And I put in the work during college to catch up to everybody else, to give myself even a shot to see if this could be a reality.
So did you feel like you had any imposter syndrome when you came to, what was it, Ohio Northern?
Ohio Northern. In terms of just like having to feel like I couldn't do it, or
like so imposter syndrome is when you go to a place and you realize, oh, I am not like these people.
Right. Yeah, I felt like my heart was like theirs. I felt like my interest in what I was doing was the same as theirs. I just felt like they were so far ahead of me. So in that sense, yeah, it felt but I never felt excluded. I just kind of felt my own drive I needed to take it into my own hands and do what I needed to do to catch up. No one told me I had to do that. I think I just was like, okay, well, if this is something I'm going to do, this is sort of a real world example of how I need to face it, by working my tail off. So when I wasn't in classes, I was in the studio. I was at the library reading. I was, soaking up as much as I could. So I feel like I took their 12 years of experience and I crammed it into 3 years, to put myself in a position to succeed. And along the way, I fell in love more with the craft, and started to sort of develop where I wanted to go on my path, on my journey to where I am now. So it was definitely intimidating, but really special at the same time.
Good. I kind of had a similar experience when I came to Lancaster Bible College. A lot of the people that come here have done, came from Sermon Stage, have came from the Fulton, have done all these local theater bits, and I came in as a percussion major originally, composition focus, percussion primary.
Right.
And the guy that I came in with me, Matt Cross, was the most amazing, like, technical drummer that I had ever met at that point. And I was sat there. I could just play like the glockenspiel really good, and that was it.
Right.
I couldn't on a drum set. My feet and my hands would just not work together. So it was like, why am I even here? When all these people, like Matthew Wilhelm and Britt Drakowski, some Zach Fernback, some of my fellow freshmen, I was like, these people are wildly talented.
Yeah.
And here I am, coming as a comp major, having not written any songs, and coming from Salisbury, Maryland, that's completely disjointed from anywhere Lancaster. And how do I even approach these people,
Right.
in some aspects? But I'm glad that you weren't excluded. I didn't feel excluded, but it was more of just like the theater people are over here,
Right.
and then there's everybody else.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that, and similarly, like in Green Bay, arts weren't that big.
Mm-hmm.
Sports was, and
Mm-hmm.
academics were. So I remember people saying to me like, "You're gonna do what?" And I was like, "I'm thinking about going to school for this." And they were like, "How's that work?" So yeah, it was definitely a learning curve once I got there.
What influenced your choice to go to Ohio Northern?
Again, I feel like I tripped and fell, and when I looked up, it was Ohio Northern in front of me. It was I don't know how well I handled the whole college search situation. I did know that I had been accepted into a university out west in Arizona, and it was a lot of logistical things and things that went wrong, in that I was accepted into the university but not accepted into the program. And it got a little messy, and I didn't really know what was going on. And at that point it was the 11th hour, and my mother had, I think I had a stack of maybes, of like back burner universities that I thought, well, they have a program and I'll put it in that stack over there. And I think my mother, like in a day's notice, called the university and got through to like the chair of the theater department and said, "Help! help my son. And they said, well, we're actually having like a sort of orientation weekend coming up like in next week. And so my mother and I got in the car and drove to Ohio. And we're driving in the middle of cornfields.
Right.
And I was like, this is like Wisconsin. This feels like
Home.
yeah, but not in a good way.
Oh, really? Oh, gotcha.
I was kind of like, this might be one and done.
Gotcha.
I was like, and then it just opened up like a diamond in the rough, this beautiful university. And I thought, okay, well, this is odd but interesting. And we, pulled in, and there was a lot of students and a lot of stuff going on, and they were doing a show at the theater. And there's this gorgeous performing arts center, which again felt odd to me. It's not, it's often not the first place that universities put money.
Right.
Is into the arts or into their theaters. So we went and saw a show, and it was fantastic. And I met the chair, and he said, this is great. You can do this. They said, we'll give you money. We'll give you a scholarship. And I didn't really even do anything. So it was all very surreal. And, and my mother just, she was the one who made it all work. And then once I got there and started taking the classes and realizing how much they invested in their theater program, at the time, the theater is named after the at the time president of the university, who loved the arts. Mm-hmm. So there was no shortage of money going into that program, which meant they could do a ton of shows in a gorgeous facility. It was a small university, which I loved because I got the individual attention that I needed. And the rest was history. I fell in love immediately with that program. I owe everything to that program in terms of preparing me and giving me opportunities to build a resume and to learn about myself and all of that. So, pretty incredible experience.
So, what did you do after college? What led to moving around? Did you go back home? Did you stay in Ohio?
No, I actually didn't even walk at graduation because I got a job.
Wow.
So it was, again, just very fortunate. I learned by just living it, the importance of networking. Mm-hmm. And so we had a guest directors would often come into the program and work with us on different shows. In my junior year, a guy by the name of David Leadholt came in and directed a show, and he and I were just sort of knit from the same cloth. Like we got along, we shared the same sense of humor. So we got to know each other a little bit and hang out, have dinner, whatever. And he was a working artist in the country and would bounce around. He was freelance, but he was an actor turned director at the time. Mm. And then he came back senior year and did another show with us and got to work with him again. And so we had a really great relationship. And he was like, "Hey, I'm doing there's a show that needs somebody." A tour of a children's tour of Aladdin, and it popped up, and they basically called me the week before finals, sent me the materials, and asked if I could be there like next Wednesday in Houston. And so I was like, well, I think I can because my last final is Tuesday.
Oh, nice.
And so it was like, I took my last final, packed up everything. Again, I was 21 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. But flew out to Houston. I'm pretty sure I went on like 48 hours after that because I was replacing somebody on a tour that was already going, and so it was basically like get to the hotel and like rehearse by the pool and like go up and rehearse and do the music and do the choreography, and the next day go watch the show, and then you're on. That's all we get. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
But survived it, and I stayed on that tour, and we went west all the way to California, up northwest and back, and so I graduated, but I never walked because I had to work. So I was on tour, and then the rest was again. I then for 12 years I didn't stop working.
At that same place?
No, I was then. That's where it sort of took off from there, and I went from there to Hershey Park, and then from Hershey Park to Ohio, and Ohio to another tour, and down to Florida and up to Maine and Kansas. So I know we listed a couple things
Yeah.
on there, but I've seen the country
Hmm.
doing this, which is great when you're young and aren't tied down to anything. Um, so yeah, so I became very good at networking, at lining up my work. Um, a lot of actors get work and then they stop thinking about it until it's a week before the end of their contract and they realize they don't have work lined up.
Mm.
So I became very good at never stopping. The first thing I did when I got a job was I tried to line up the next one. Um, and so I did it successfully for a dozen years or so, many theaters, many experiences, many shows around the country.
So I want to talk about a little bit of the different aspects of each place you've been to.
Yeah.
What place listed here was first? Was it the Miracle Theater?
On that list, no. Hershey Park would have been.
Really, Hershey Park and Hershey.
Yeah, and that was the second job I had in my career. So I was 22 years old, working at the old Music Box Theater. So now they have a really nice Music Box
Mhm.
Theater there. It used to be not that nice, and it was weird. Like the dressing rooms were behind the audience,
What?
and underneath. So like we would change in our dressing room, and then we would have to go outside the building and walk around like outside to the front of the building, and then come back there to perform. And then like at the end of the show, we'd like wave to everybody, and we would actually go through the audience and into our dressing rooms, which were like under the stage basically. So it was falling apart. It was definitely had history to it.
Oh,
It was well
okay.
used. But yeah, loved my time there. But yeah, and then who knew that like Central Pennsylvania is where I would
Right.
ultimately end up.
Yeah.
15, 20 years later. And I remember loving it. I remember loving Central PA when I worked at Hershey. I came back to Hershey multiple times. I did a couple summers there. I did a couple Christmases there. And I always loved the area. And I think in the back of my head, I was always like, I love this area. It's close to New York. It's close. And I wasn't a big city
Yeah.
guy, even when I did the New York thing and I hated it.
Oh, really?
I was never really like the big city. I like the quieter, the Midwest feel to it.
Mhm.
And so I'm tucked in the back of my head. I was always thinking like, I could go back to Central Pennsylvania. And then sure enough,
Here you are.
however many years later. So that was the first one on the list for those, and so loved it.
So what you said you've worked in New York City.
Yeah.
How does that differ from Pigeon Forge, Tennessee?
I mean, New York is what you see in the movies,
Right.
except hotter. I don't know, except grosser and less sleep.
That's fair. Yeah.
All of those things. It's as busy and hustle and bustle as you think it is. The stuff that people don't tell you is how expensive it is to live there, and to travel there, meaning like transportation or commuting. I had a car. I was working on Long Island, but I was living in Astoria, Queens, and so I would have to drive every day, which I didn't mind that much. I didn't mind driving in the city, but again,
Parking
that's
is
gas. Yeah,
insane.
it can be insane. Yeah, you kind of got to know where you're going, but you can't make a regular habit of going out to eat,
Mhm.
just because of again the time and the cost and the exhaustion of it all. It's not easy to get anywhere. When I was luckily when I was performing, I wasn't actually performing in New York. I would go there to get work.
Mm.
So I'd go there to audition, and I was luckily I was able to get work pretty quickly. So I usually wasn't there very long. I was there subletting or sleeping on someone's couch,
Mhm.
just to hit a round of auditions, and then I'd get hired to go to Kansas
Oh,
or wherever else, because companies would go there to
find
cast
talent and then
and then
out.
bring them back around the country.
That's so interesting.
So, so again, thankfully, I wasn't tied down to a sublet until later on in my career, and I was working. Like I said, I was working out on Long Island. I was teaching a high school on Long Island, and I was also directing their show. So I had like 6 months that I had to stay there, and that's when I had a sublet in Queens, but I still wasn't making enough money. So I worked at KB Toys in Astoria, stocking shelves from like 5 a.m. to like 10 a.m. And then like I would finish my shift, eat lunch, and drive out to Long Island. And by the time I got home from Long Island, it was 10 o'clock at night, and I would like lay down for a few hours and then get up and go
Yep.
stock shelves at 5 a.m. So it was misery.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was, again, thankful I was young and I chalk it up as like an amazing experience. But it was one of those moments where I was certain that that's not what I wanted out of this business, and that's not the way I wanted to work and live. So I say now I love to visit New York. I am thankful that I don't live there. And for some people, they love that. They love New York, and I don't argue with that at all. But for me, that was enough.
Yeah, I've been to New York a few times, and you're right. It's all the time, constantly. Sleep is the last thing you plan,
Right.
and it's hard. It is hard to live there. I've had to sleep in my car a few times, which is not fun at all.
Right.
Sleeping in your car in Brooklyn is when the subway goes overhead. It's just I can't be bothered to do this at
Yeah.
all. I don't know how people live here.
Yeah.
Um, and it's especially nowadays with you've got all these things happening in New York City, and it's almost impossible to get around.
Yeah.
Uh, and traffic is a nightmare in New York City. I'm sure that's always been the case.
Yeah. I don't think that's ever changed.
So how did that compare to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee?
Everything was different about it. Southern hospitality is the difference. And again, many places in between that I was, but in compare, Pigeon Forge is the last place I lived before moving to Lancaster. And Pigeon Forge again felt Midwest to me, but even a little bit slower. So that actually sometimes to a fault. I was like, I love talking to you, my waiter or waitress, but can I get my food, please? No, but I did love that, and I got used to it. I really fell in love with that was the first time I had spent time in Florida, but Florida doesn't feel like the South to me. But Tennessee has that feel. Tennessee, Kentucky, that kind of area, the country has that Southern hospitality, and things felt slow and manageable and beautiful. Pigeon Forge is right in the Smoky Mountains. And at the time, that's also where I got married. We built a house, or had a house built there, and we'd go out our front door and just saw the panoramic view of the Smoky Mountains every morning, and it was just glorious. So they call it God's country a little bit down there, and it is beautiful. And Pigeon Forge is an interesting town, though.
Very much so.
Anyone's ever been to Branson or Pigeon Forge, you know what I'm talking about, but it's all the family bands, and their theaters. Every show has sort of the same format, and every show ends with God bless the USA. And, it's just an interesting, quirky town, very, very touristy town, but I really did fall in love with the area there. Planned to stay there for, I when we got married and had the house, we thought that was where we were going to live. And then the Lord had other plans for us, and we ended up in Lancaster.
So what pushed your move to Lancaster?
Right. We worked my wife and I worked at a theater called the Miracle Theater in Pigeon Forge, which was one of the other few Christian theaters in the country. It was sort of like a Sight and Sound Junior, so just a little bit smaller. And again, we were happy there, but there was rumblings that the theater was going to be closing down, and then ultimately it did. It changed from the Miracle Theater to the Smoky Mountain Opry at the time, which was not a Christian, not a ministry, not a Christian theater. And we tried to stick it out. We stayed on, her and I stayed on with the Opry for a bit, and it just wasn't the same, and we weren't sure what we wanted to do, and Sight and Sound caught wind of all of this and wisely traveled to Pigeon Forge and scooped up a lot of culturally fit people to if they were looking for people to work at Sight and Sound. Here's about 30 employees who are soon to be out of work, who you already know are culturally fit to continue the same type of work. And it was
Got
true.
you.
Yeah, it was true. Well, it was truly a God moment. I actually was in management there at the Miracle at the time. I wasn't performing, and I actually looked at it as an opportunity for a day off, because the auditions were going to be happening. They were coming into audition, and I was like, I don't really want the temptation to go to move. Like, we're good here. We just have to figure out what we're doing. And then I got a call from somebody saying, like, look, they need somebody to teach the dance call. Would you mind doing it? And I was like, oh, okay. And so I ended up in the building, and I ended up doing the dance call, and ended up helping the team with the auditions and the callbacks. And so I was sitting at the table with them. I think I was running the video camera, I'm not sure, and talking to them in between actors. And at one point they leaned over and said, and they were lining up interviews for that night with everybody, like one-on-one interviews, and they were like, could we talk to you tonight as well? I was like, here we go. This is exactly what I was worried was going to happen. And then fast forward, and I ended up coming into, I had to perform first. Again, I had sort of successfully made my way out of performing and into the production side of things. But in order to get to Sight and Sound, they say, well, you're probably going to have to perform first. That's where, kind of where people would start, just to get a feel for it. And so they had a spot in Jonah for me to be in the cast in 2012.
Oh, 2012.
And the rest was sort of history. I came in there as a performer. That only lasted about 6 months. Not even, I think it was like 4 months I performed before moving into the seat of production stage manager. And then from there, I was an assistant choreographer, and then a choreographer, and also a director, and on the story department, and an assistant director. It was a quick rise up the ladder there, and was so blessed by the opportunities there. Incredible time. It's an incredible experience for anyone who has the opportunity to work there. And I was just humbled by the opportunities that I got in 5 years there, all the way up to being able to direct Jonah in 2017. So it was sort of full circle for me. I came in with Jonah, and it was also the last one of the last things I did there.
Yeah, and for anybody who wants to go to Sight and Sound, or if you haven't ever been, and you just want to experience something that is unlike any other theater experience that I've ever been to, even in some levels it's better than Broadway, New York City.
Yeah.
Definitely check out Sight and Sound. They're running David right now, which is the story of David. Even if you're not a Christian,
it's just a massive experience.
It's a massive, monumental experience, and something that I will never. I saw Jonah when they redid it in 2017. I guess
17. Yep.
Yeah. So when the giant whale comes out over you, and you're just like, "What's happening?"
Yeah, it's shocking.
And we'll get back to Sight and Sound on after the radio portion of the show. I would love to talk about how you got to Summer Stage. And how you got to be an artistic director, and what is an artistic director?
Sure. Yeah, it was around. Well, while I was still at Sight and Sound, I was still, there's a lot of so much theater in Lancaster, which is great. It's so unique in many ways, but with many budding and up and coming theater companies, especially around then 2013, 2014. And Jonathan Bauer, who is the executive director, but also the founder of Servant Stage Company. We had worked on a project with another company in town. It was the first time we kind of met, but didn't get to know each other too well. But then he gave me a call one day, sort of out of the blue, saying, "Hey, I got your name from somebody. Wanted to see if you're interested in coming in and helping us out with a show." And the show was a Yankee Doodle Dandy, the music of America, a patriotic review. I said, sure, I'll come help out. And came and helped out, did the choreography, directed the show. And it kind of led to, do you want to come and do a Christmas show with us? And so I was familiar with the company by that point, and loved it, loved the mission, loved the company. In right around 2015, I started to feel a bit of a stirring. I felt that the Lord was leading me away from Sight. Like my time at Sight and Sound was wrapping up, and I wasn't sure what that meant. I was just trying to wait and listen, but I was sort of convinced that I was supposed to go back down south with my wife. Um, and I just had this feeling she had sort of made compromise for us to come here to be a part of Sight and Sound, and so she kind of dropped everything and followed me here, and we loved it. But I knew she really missed the South and missed her family, and so again, there was a part of me that was saying like maybe we're supposed to go back there, and I'm supposed to provide for her in that way, and whether I'm performing or directing or working at Applebee's, I don't know. It didn't really matter. I just kind of was convinced of that. So I made that decision to leave Sight and Sound with nothing lined up. So it was truly a sort of a step of faith that I was leaving. And enter Jonathan Bauer again, and asked if I wanted to come on full time with Servant Stage, and I actually turned it down multiple times. Turned down the position, saying like, "No, I'm so sorry. It's not you. It's not you. It's me."
Right.
You know, it's I just feel led. Like I'm not sure yet. I'm still waiting on clarity, even though the clarity was right in front of me.
Right.
But I was waiting for some clarity as to what we were supposed to do. But in my head, I was still thinking, we're going south. We're going south. We're going to be out of Lancaster. And while I was out in Branson doing a show for Sight and Sound out there, the Lord just spoke very clearly to me. One of those moments where I just felt very clear communication through my wife and through my dear friend Dan. And it just felt like it all landed. And that's where I was supposed to be, was still in Lancaster and with Servant Stage. I remember texting Jonathan right away and saying, "Hey, if I'm in," and he said, "Great, let's talk when you get back from Branson." And so, it all happened pretty fast from then. Came on as the artistic director, who is sort of leader of all things, like you'd assume, all things artistic, on the artistic side of production. So everything from deciding which shows we're going to do to casting, auditions, staffing things, creating more content, working on original shows, hiring the production team. So who's going to do the lighting, who's going to do the audio, all of those things. So taking care of everything basically from the stage back, while the rest of the team, the executive director, works on the front of house and the big picture of the company and things like that. So actually in my 6th year now of that position, just celebrated 5th year at the beginning of 21, and I've just been so fortunate to work with the company. It's a position that I felt like I've been working my whole career towards. When I landed there, I was like, finally, like I worked, and not that I never really, not that I dwelled in that or sat unhappy in other positions, but it was there was always something that I was like, it's close.
But it's not.
It's not quite there. And when I came on with Servant Stage full time, I felt for the first time, this could be it. Like this, this could be what I've been training for and what I thought it would be. So been just so fortunate to be with the team there. Small staff and just dear people, all like-minded and huge hearts. And I just love the staff and everybody we get to work with.
So one of the coolest things or most unique things about Servant Stage that blew my mind when I first heard about it was that your company is purely based off of donations.
Right.
There is no, it's always pay what you will.
Yep.
And how does one run off of that kind of, I know that's maybe more of a Jonathan question,
right.
But I'm sure you've had to deal with that as well.
Well, yeah, every time I explain the company to someone, I love the experience, because every time someone doesn't know and they experience it and you try to explain it to them, they go, "Wait, what?"
Right.
They say, "That doesn't make sense."
Mm-hmm.
And any business-minded person, any business person would look at it on paper and say, "This will never work."
Yep.
This doesn't work. Yet it does. Again, it's the right theater company. It's the right mission in the right place, in the right location. Lancaster is so rich in support of the arts. The community, it backs the arts in such a huge way in Lancaster. And so it has that going for it. And then the mission is about accessibility. So we bring the theater to the people, and we allow for anybody to come see and experience a part of Servant Stage, that whether it's a show or a camp or classes, whatever it is, regardless of their background, all of the factors that could limit somebody from experiencing great theater. So it's just a brilliant mission put together with a huge heart for serving one another and for serving our community, giving back to the community what they back us for. It all works. Jonathan is just a fantastic leader of the organization and the heart of it all, and he's just created something really special. But it doesn't work just one way. It only works with the community behind us,
right?
With the teams of people who come alongside of us to either perform in the shows or serve as volunteers in the front of house, or help build the sets or what have you. It's not a one-way street. It only works because it's community-based and it's about serving each other.
Yeah, I don't think it would work in any other place besides Lancaster, PA. I've been to Chicago, St. Louis,
Yeah.
Nashville. I don't even think it'd be able to work in Nashville, just because of, granted, they support the arts, but I don't know how friendly they are towards this kind of aspect where they would be willing to give up more money than a normal theater would ever ask for,
Right.
to keep it going.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would be stingy and I'm sure you guys deal with that sometimes, but
yeah. And that's okay though.
And that's okay. Yeah. And that's totally okay, because you guys will do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys will do it till you can't anymore.
Right.
And then do it some more.
Yeah. And it's worked successfully. So now it's not a hope and a prayer anymore.
Right.
It's become fairly predictable in what we can expect from venues and annually, and even that continues to grow. So thankfully, it's has a track record of succeeding every year, and growing it every year. So now it feels, with each year it feels more secure, it feels more stable. Of course, 2020 was a challenge for everybody, but we made it through that, and are looking at a bright future for the company.
So what's it like to, you say you write original shows, what does that look like?
Yeah, we do. We've done a handful of original shows. We do one maybe two every year. And some we recycle after having put them together, and it's not. They're usually what we usually do original shows. We do sort of musical reviews, so they're more music based and sort of tying together a theme or a story through music. I'm in no way a script writer or anything like that who's going to give you, a layered mystery or anything like that. That's out of my wheelhouse and comfort zone. But we find themes. A lot of times our summer touring shows are our original show because we do so many of them. We travel them. So we've done the Old Time Gospel Radio Hour based on like an old radio show. This summer, we're working on a rock and roll. It's called Rock Around the Clock. All 50s, 60s, 70s. So my buddy Tyler Hoover and I are putting that together. It kind of just takes throwing at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? And we say, like, what's our favorite songs and what do people like to hear and what's the style they like, and do they tie together, and can we mash these two up and put this in a medley? As what's the theme, and then we do tie it together loosely with some script. We like to make it educational as well, so we like to include history in it, about the music, about the styles. So it's always fun, but it's a different sort of challenge.
Yeah. So, do you guys have any plans to like write original musicals or original plays at all?
It's something that we are interested in, and we want to be able to support as new works. And actually, last year, Tyler Hoover, who's our managing director, he had been working for years on a musical uh, uh, called Prodigal.
That's right.
And
Yes.
and so we actually, we helped light a fire under him, as we said the year before. We said, Tyler, we're going to put this, we want to put it in the season next year as a reading, a staged reading of your brand new musical.
Mm-hmm.
And so what had been sort of a touch and go sort of side project for him got, you know, put on the front burner at that point, and sort of forced him to write it and to actually like commit full time to it. And he did, and he's so gifted. And that was that wasn't just a musical review. That is a full musical script and score, and we were able to perform that in this. I think like 1 year ago this weekend.
Yeah.
Actually, it popped up on my Facebook memory that we got to put that show together with him, a stage reading of it over at Lancaster Alliance Church, and we had talkback sessions with the audience, and it was just such a neat experience, and so cool to see him thrive in that way. He's a gifted guy wears many hats, but got to see him sort of live in that writer role for a bit, and he just did a fantastic job with it.
Has he? Do you know if he's finished it completely or?
No, I know there, like with all artists, like he was trying to make sure we had something to put out there, and of course there was stuff he was probably compromising with and saying like, I know this needs to be fleshed out more. I know I would do this differently. So he took a lot of feedback. He met with a lot of people afterwards, and it's something he wants to continue working on. So I think it'll always be a work in progress for him, but he definitely is driven to continue working through that show, and I look forward to seeing whether it's with us or someone else that he's able to produce it again.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk a bit more about Servant Stage later, but I would like to fit in your faith journey a bit. So, were you always a Christian? Did you grow up in a Christian family, or was that a thing that came to you?
Yeah, I grew up in the Catholic school system, and so faith was present in the home. Not always, it wasn't always on the forefront. But grew up in it, 12 years of Catholic school, and I think just through a series of events and just sort of being in that system at that particular time, actually pushed me away from faith for a while. And I don't know if it's not one thing that stands out or anything like that, but just again through a series of those 12 years, I found myself on the outside sort of looking in, and then just sort of followed that path. I kind of rejected it and kind of said, I'm sort of done with that. So clearly my faith wasn't very deeply rooted at that time, and probably for many reasons. But I went into college and into this performing career without a relationship or without a faith. And theater, it can be a pretty rough industry, pretty dark industry. And so for a majority of that performing career, I was living that lifestyle. I was living in the darkness and sort of just embracing and being a part of that theatrical lifestyle. But as I got older, and as you mentioned, I'm touring, I'm traveling all over the place. I started to acknowledge and feel a void in my life, and not able to put my finger on it, but able to say like, this is just starting to feel kind of empty. Like I liked it when I was young, and I liked it when I was, being in this show and this show and this show, but now I'm tired. I'm single. Like I don't really do anything with my spare time. I don't have other interests. Like I just kind of feel empty. And enter my now wife, Andrea, who we met on a national tour. And, there was kind of some interest there in each other. And we ended up in Pigeon Forge together, which was, again, just ironic and unusual that we would just connect then again. And it's here that sort of the Lord re-entered my life as well. I really was fortunate to be able to sort of see God putting the pieces together as it was happening. But and it's there's so many more layers to the story. But I know trying to get through it. When I went to Pigeon Forge, it wasn't for the Miracle Theater. It was actually for another theater, a brand new show. And I had asked her because I knew she was in Pigeon Forge in another show, not the Miracle Theater. I said, "There's this new show. They're asking me to be a part of it." She said, "It's supposed to be great. It's everyone's talking about this brand new show. You should come do it." So I said, "Okay, I guess I'm going to Pigeon Forge," and got there and did that show. And she was in her other show, and at that point we were both in pretty good headspaces. So we started dating at that point. And a couple things happened. The show that I was in was a horrible experience.
Oh, really?
It was one of the worst professional experiences of my career. So it did not pan out like everyone was talking about.
Oh, wow.
And but now I had found myself in a relationship. In my relationship, Andrea had basically said to me, like, "I know you don't go to church." She said, "If this is going to turn into something, I need that to be important to you." I thought, okay, like, we'll give it a go, as I tiptoed back into the church. And we walked into, she hadn't established herself at a church either there. And we walked into a church called Pathways Church, which ultimately was life-changing for me. It felt like I was just sort of taken over when I went in there, met all the right people, including the pastor, who changed my life. And then again was handing out resumes. So, but at this point, I feel I'm in a relationship with this girl. I want to see it through. I want to stay with it. So I want to stay in Pigeon Forge, but I don't have a job because I'm not going back to that theater. So I was literally handing out applications at Walmart and Applebee's and wherever. And there was the Miracle Theater, which up to that point I was like, stay away. Like that's them.
Yeah, right.
That's not me. And I sent an email over and said, "Hey, I'm a local performer if you're looking for anybody." And like within minutes I got an email back saying, "Hey, we actually do need somebody. Can you come audition for us?"
Within minutes.
I mean, it was shocking. It was jarring. And went in and did an audition. So uncomfortable for me because I was still very guarded and very hard exterior on all of it. And went in, did the audition, went home. And they said, "We'll let you know." And my wife had given me this. I'll never forget. My wife had given me like a devotional book to be reading through. And I got home and I said, "Oh, okay, I think I'm willing to do this your way." And I knelt at the foot of my bed and I opened up the devotional for that day. And it's not a joke. It sounds so cheesy, but I opened up the devotional for that day and it said, "Today is the day that could be your miracle." And I was like, okay, like again, kind of uncomfortable. But and the next day I went. They asked me to go back in, and he had a contract right there and offered it to me to be a part of the Miracle Theater. And so the combination of that and being at the church and meeting Andrea all came together and just put me sort of on fire for that relationship and to rebuild my faith and restore my faith that I really had never had to that level, to that extent. But again, one of those moments where I felt so far behind, but I was so hungry for it. So I just latched onto those things, the theater and the church and Andrea, to sort of build up that relationship again. A year later, I got baptized in that church. And then a year after that, the next year we got married. And our pastor did our wedding and so from then it's been still a learning process. I still consider myself very unknowledgeable and also very unworthy of my relationship. But he sought after me when I was as far lost as one could get, and so I trust him in this journey, and that even when I falter and continue to screw up, that he's there to take care of me. So. It's a very important part of my life and my work and my family, and so that's the nutshell version of it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
We're actually kind of rounding out our time on the radio. So, what are some upcoming shows for Servant Stage?
Servant Stage is we're 1 week away from opening Newsies.
That's
right here
yeah.
at Lancaster Bible College. I'll be running for 3 weekends. from June 3rd to the 19th. Incredible cast.
Yeah, some of my friends are involved.
Yeah. So close to 50 people in the cast, and they're just so incredibly talented. If you've never seen Newsies, this is the one you don't want to miss. It's so high energy. And again, it's all pay what you will. So we have that coming up. We have our summer show, Rock Around the Clock. We'll play all over Lancaster County. And then Ragtime, the biggest show we've ever done, will be this fall at Lancaster Mennonite High School.
Really, Ragtime?
Yeah, so that's been on my bucket list for years and years and years and years. And so that is going to be amazing production in the fall. And then we close out the year with a Christmas Carol. That'll be touring all over as well. We also have educational opportunities, summer camps, Monday night drop-in classes, all kinds of stuff going on. Check out our website if you can.
And that's servantstage.com?
Servantstage.org.
Oh,
so .org.
That's right, because you guys are nonprofit.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, yes, please check us out. If you haven't heard of Servant Stage, come experience it. It's harder to explain. It's easier to experience.
Yes, that's very true, actually. So they have a Facebook page. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them all places. All places.
We're all over the place. I don't know all that social media stuff, but yes, we're on the Facebook, Instagram, yes, and all of that as well. They laugh at me because they don't let me near that stuff. So
yeah, and Newsies was one of the first shows I ever saw on Broadway, and that's what really kind of set me on fire for like theater. Was even though I had done theater in the past, it was watching Newsies and watching them go around the stage and like move the sets around while people were on it.
Yeah.
Like stuff that was just impossible to me. Newsies is a very great show. Ragtime is also another very great show. Very harsh material.
Yeah, but very relevant.
But very relevant and very, very moving.
Yeah.
A story. So if you want to see more about that and Servant Stage, do check out their website. Check out their shows coming up. And with all that said, we're gonna take a little bit of a break here and play one of my original songs, "You Remain." This is a song I wrote 2 years ago during the COVID shutdown, and it really hit me that things in this life are very, very temporary, and there is only one consistent thing, and that is God. So with that said, this is "You Remain."
When I am weak, can no longer speak, you are there, right beside me. When all hope is lost, and I can't bear the cost, you are there, paying it for me. And when things turn to dust, and there's nothing to trust, you are there, honest to me. Oh, it's clear who you're meant to be. You are my strength. You are my faith. When all things fade away, you remain. When I've been crying, everything is dying, you are there, breathing life into me. And all I do is fear, and nothing seems clear. You are there, comforting me. Oh, it's clear who you're meant to be. Kingdom falls, yeah, you remain. So I'm gonna sing and shout and tell them all. That's when every kingdom falls, yeah, you remain. So I'm gonna sing and shout and tell them all.
All right. Okay, now that we're off the radio. So, we had during your relationship story, you had talked about making compromises for your wife and she making compromises for you.
Right.
How important do you obviously you think that's very important.
Yeah.
What drives you? What drove you to have that as a centerpiece for you? Compromise.
I mean, I think that's a life lesson. I feel like that's just the way that people should be willing to operate and function in their lives, and especially if it's someone that you are sharing life with, it can't be a one-sided thing. So that's just always what I wanted to be able to always give as much as I'm taking from someone else in a relationship. And so it's hard. Like but my wife gives so much to me and my career. It's not easy what I do. For anyone in theater, relationships in theater don't always go together. They're hard because the theater, the lifestyle and the schedule is so demanding oftentimes that relationships are hard to make work. And so she continually gives and makes compromises of her daily schedule in order for me to do what I love to do, and to be in rehearsals until 10 o'clock at night, and to have long weekends, and to be at the shows when they're happening and things like that. So, it's not easy, but you have to be intentional. I feel like we have to be intentional about how we spend our time together, and how we, and I have two daughters as well. And again, just making sure that my family is a huge part of what I do, and without them, I couldn't do what I do. But in turn, I need to make sure that I'm giving them time that they need as well from me.
So how do you balance that aspect of being a present father, but also being the artistic director of this growing company?
Yeah, and being someone who's wired to work nonstop.
Right.
That's I say my hand was kind of forced when I got married and when I had children, meaning that prior to that, it wasn't uncommon for me to just go days without stopping, and to just work and work and work and work. That was my relationship. Before I was married, my relationship was my work, and so I spent every minute with that. And then so when I got married, my hand was kind of forced to change my priorities, and it was something I willingly did. I wanted to. And same thing with having kids. Like all of a sudden I had other things that I wanted to do, that I wanted to be my relationship other than my work. So it took time to figure out our system. It took a lot of crashing schedules and things like that. Now we've been doing it for some time. We've been married for 12 years, and I've been with Servant Stage for over 5 years. That we're able to sort of figure out her schedule. She teaches dance, my schedule. We're both kind of create our own schedules, so we're able to say, okay, I know that Mondays and Wednesdays I've got the girls, Tuesdays and Thursdays you got this, and then Sundays we do this, Saturdays family. So we had to intentionally schedule it, and we're able to look at the whole calendar. I usually step away and I look at a whole year. I don't just look at like a week. Wow. I look at a whole year, because there's seasons that stink. There's seasons where I crash with work so bad, like I during a tech week.
Right,
or whatever, a rehearsal, or there's 2 shows going on at once or something like that, that if I just look at that in the moment, I would throw my hands up and say, I can't do this. So I have to look at my whole season, my whole year, and say, okay. And I said, I show my wife and I say, just look here, look at this 4 weeks here. That's going to stink. But then look right after it. It calms down a little bit. So we'll have a couple weeks there where I'll be home more, and then it might stink again for a little bit. And then it's this. It helps us manage and communicate it and understand that they're all going to be seasons. But then without fail, we get to the nice seasons where I'm home for 2 weeks straight, and then I get a bunch of grief from her and the girls saying you have to go back to rehearsals now. So as much as we plan it, we still we still give each other guilt about all of it. But again. And even what her position is not for everybody either. Her heart is, she loves being home and taking care of the girls. She loves teaching dance. I know there's things that that there's probably missing from her life, or that she would maybe want to do as well. But she supports me 100%. And yeah, so I couldn't do it without her allowing me to do it.
Do your how old are your girls?
8 and 3.
So,
Eight going on 20,
right.
and 3 going on 10.
Right. So how big of a fan are they of your work? Do they ever get a chance to be a part of the shows at all, or?
I don't know that they fully understand. Like, it must be, I wouldn't know, but it must be so strange growing up in theater. You know, they don't know anything else. So they have always been around the shows and the rehearsals and everything, and they like seeing them. And Joyanna, my 8-year-old, tells me what she likes or doesn't like. I know if it's a ballad, she's bored. So if anything moves too slowly for her, she's bored and wants to leave. So she needs the up tempo. She loves Newsies though. She can't wait to come see Newsies. And then Juliet is definitely high energy as well. Joyanna tells me, and she's going to hear this. She told me she was going to brag to her friends today that I was on the radio. But she swears that she's not going to be in theater. She's very shy, and but she's good at it. She's a good singer. She's a good dancer. She's definitely an actress. And loves drama. But she gets very shy. So we'll catch her. I'll catch her dancing or something in the living room, and if she knows I'm there, she stops and shuts the music off. But who knows? I was very shy as a kid too. So we'll see. And then Juliet, I think, is a firecracker. I think she'll be in it pretty quickly if she can.
Yeah, it's always funny finding shy musicians. Because even when I'm like practicing piano or whatever, and someone walks in, I just immediately stop.
Yeah.
And they're like, "You can keep playing." I'm like, "No,
yeah.
I'm good."
Yeah, no, it's an interesting dynamic always. And again, that was kind of how I was my whole career. I was never one for for a great deal of attention. I liked being on stage, but I liked it because of the energy in the room and everything like that. I wasn't doing it to be received by the audience,
right?
Necessarily. So.
That's an interesting dynamic. Maybe because we stop performing when someone walks in, it's because we're not doing it for an audience. It's because we do it because we love it.
Yeah, there's not footlights there to separate you and the audience. That can be very, very uncomfortable for some performers, even.
Yeah, I consider myself an introvert. And doing Shrek was a lot of fun. But I never really had that stage fright. Granted, I was in the outhouse during. Have you ever seen Shrek the musical? The first big number is like one of the most high energy pieces, at least when adult Shrek comes out.
Yeah.
So I just had that moment just to prep myself and bang and go out and do it.
Yeah.
So that was definitely helpful.
Yeah. But it is nice to have that distance between you and the audience.
Right.
Or that sort of separation. That's why a lot of performers don't audition well. Because they're not on stage. There's not separation there. You're kind of right up and
it's not black out there. You
can
actually see.
You see everything. Yep.
You see it, and you see their faces, and you're like, I don't like this at all.
It's true. It's very different. Can be very uncomfortable.
What is some advice you would give to people for auditioning that maybe have those kind of fears?
Yeah, auditioning is so tricky. Everything about this business is tricky. It's a subjective business. Where we are our worst critics, we put so much value in the opinions of others, and sometimes that's the determining factor of whether we get paid or not is because of the opinions of someone else. It's not factual. We can't point to something and say, I didn't do this, therefore I didn't get hired. It's not that cut and dry. It's so we get stuck in our own heads and our own self-critique, and it usually paralyzes us or makes us second guess all of it. When I tell, I teach young performers and I work with a lot of young performers, and my goal is always to try to get them to control what they can control and not worry about what they cannot control. Again, it's a life lesson, easier said than done.
Right.
But you can only control what you can control. And know that if you love to do this, there's a spot for you in this business. There's so much theater. There's so many. The arts are back in a big way. I know in the 90s and early 2000s, the arts in the country were suffering quite a bit. There's a lot of funding being pulled, and there just wasn't a lot of money going towards the arts, but they've resurfaced in such a big way in the country that you can do it anywhere, and you can do it if you want to do it. So it's just finding your place and trusting that you'll get there. And the way that I think you get there is by being yourself. My biggest pet peeve when people come in audition is, I don't want to see you put on. Like, I don't want to see you pretend to be something that you think that I want to see or whatever. I want to see the real person. I want to know who I'm about to be working with.
Mm-hmm.
Talent is one of the last things I look at when I'm casting or deciding who I want to work with. Obviously, I want to know that there's some sort of investment from them in the craft.
Right.
I want to know that they're actively working on their voice or their dance skills or their acting skills. But I can peg that pretty quickly. So when I make a list of the things that I look for, I did this for my students the other day. I made a list from top to bottom, and at the top was things like discipline, work ethic, kindness, being genuine, personality, heart, energy, fun, and then at the bottom I had singing, acting, dancing.
All that can be accomplished with those discipline and work ethic.
And I spent, you're spending a rehearsal process with someone. It's like bringing someone into your house, right? You work together, you laugh together, you cry together, you're uncomfortable together, you're irritable with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of those things, those personalities come out. So right off the bat, I want to know that they're going to be someone that I can get, that I can be happy with and laugh with and cry with and be irritable with. Mm-hmm. And if you're not showing me your real self when you walk in that room, then that means I have to navigate through that at some point. Like, why not just show it to me right away and show me what I'm dealing with? Because that's what I want to know is your personality. So hopefully when I tell people that it takes some pressure off of them, because being something you're not is hard, right? That's what's exhausting. And that's usually what create nerves. Nerves are often created in those instances because you're trying to do something that's not you. Right. And a lot of people think that's what acting is. Well, yeah, there's technique in that and how you train and how you attack a character. But just in terms of employer-employee relationship, you just got to be yourself. Right. So I always just say, like, stop the act, walk in and show me who you are, and that I want to work with you. And then we'll figure out where you fit. Like, then I'll see where your strengths are and what I think your strengths are. But so that's probably the biggest thing that I always want to tell people when they're coming into audition. And then I also want to tell them, just forget it when you're gone. Like, forget it when you're done, because don't try to analyze or figure out what I'm thinking or what I'm going to do, because it's subjective. Right. So don't let auditioning for me and me not casting you be a reason that you stop doing this. Right? You're here because you love doing this. Right. You've got a fire, and artists are weird. We have this fire in us that makes us kind of different, right? But it's in there, and you can't get rid of it. Like, so you don't want to put out that fire. So know that one experience shouldn't stop you from doing what you love. That's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot to process. It's a lot to process. Acting is tough. They go through so much, and they go through so much emotion. Oh yeah, it's an exhausting thing to do, but we do it because we love it. And I love when people love it. You can just tell. You can tell when someone's passionate about it. And I always want to care for actors and say, like, just take care of yourself and, again, control what you can control, and don't try to figure out what they're thinking behind the table, because you never know. Is that an answer to the question, what is one mistake actors constantly make? Yeah, they try too hard to be something they're not. They try too hard to put on for a director, or try to figure out what a director wants and then try to do that. You don't know. Be yourself. So let's flip that to the director aspect. What is one mistake that directors will often make? Yeah, people ask sometimes, like, what my directing style was, or how I came up with my directing style. And I when I was performing for many years, I spent that time watching and listening the people I was working with, whether it was other actors or stage managers or production managers or directors or choreographers. And I would soak in and take in all of the experiences and say, well, that didn't feel very good. So therefore, I'm going to remember that, how I feel right now, and I'm going to try to never do that to somebody. And then somebody else would come along, or I'd have an experience, and I'd be like, I really feel valued. I really feel good about that. What did they do that made me feel that way? I'm going to try to do that when I work with people. And so, yeah, I think that's taking the long way to get to the answer. That's sort of how I have come up with the way that I direct. And it's just by taking all the experiences and trying to weed it out and take all the good experience and try to use them so that I know how the actors are feeling. I think a great director is someone who has lived it as an actor. A great director loves actors. If you think that you are separate from the actors, that you're here and the actors are here, you won't have a trust, a complete trust with the actors. Trust to me goes east and west. And so it's putting yourself in with the actors and having communication that goes sideways and not up and down. I think that directors tend to hold too tightly onto their own ideas and their own sort of agendas or vision when it's a similar compromise that makes a great production. I could easily walk into a rehearsal hall and tell everybody exactly what to do and how to do it. And I might get a cool picture. I might get a clean production, but it won't have any heart.
Right.
It'll miss the heart of the story. You can tell when you go watch shows. You can tell if the actors are enjoying it or not.
Right.
You can tell if they're invested in the story and if they feel like they're an important part of the process. You can tell that by watching. And so that's what I always want actors to know, is that they are an active part of the creation of that piece, of that story. And I'll always have an idea when I go in, but the first thing I always do when I block a scene is I'll say, let's play. Just say the lines and just do what you feel. And I'll just kind of go blank canvas. And a lot of times they stand there and do nothing, and they might say like, just tell me what to do, Wally. But a lot of times also they'll do something and I'll be like, that moment was fantastic. Forget what I was thinking there. Like, that works already. So let's build around that. I always want them to feel like they are actively involved in the creation process of it. So yeah, I think that can be a pitfall for directors, is to not let go of your plan going in and forcing it on people even if it doesn't work. You have to be adaptable. You have to be able to, and flexible. And we talked about it earlier. You have to work with what's in front of you and play to their strengths. You can't, I could be going to choreograph a piece, but I'm not going to go in and say, if I've got people who don't take dance, have never taken dance, and yet in my head I want triple pirouettes happening across, all over the place. I'm not going to go in and be like, you will do this, right? We'll never get something like that. I have to go in and be like, okay, well, clearly that's not going to work. What will work to make them look good and for them to feel good about what they're doing on stage? And then we find that together.
So moving into the choreographer role, what are some of the biggest challenges choreographers have to face beyond just what can people do?
Yeah, that's just it. It's knowing because you have a wide variety of people that you're working with in one dance number. You have to be able to. You can't just focus on the dancers, right? Because you've got a lot of other people to do it. So you have to be able to focus on the whole picture and be like, how can I bring out these people? But then how can I still make it interesting for these people? And what can they do that can sort of weave in and out of this, but not make them look or feel foolish or uncomfortable in that situation? So you're always thinking and you're always looking at the big picture. You also have the challenge of, I like to direct and choreograph. But if you are a choreographer working with a director, you have to make sure you're on page with the vision, with their vision of the story. You can't just go in and say, this is my vision for the number. It doesn't, and without ever having asked the director what their story is or what their vision is. Right. Because then you get like a completely different show and the audience gets seasick, like not knowing which story to follow.
Uncohesive.
So yeah, it takes a lot of communication and intentionality of still delivering the story. You're not, as a choreographer, you're not just teaching dance. You're supporting the story through movement. And so, yeah, it's not just showing tricks and, cool moves.
Things, yeah.
It's I'm always actor first. I don't care what you can do as a dancer. If you're not telling me a story,
Right.
it doesn't matter.
It's movement with a purpose.
Yeah. It has to have a purpose. It has to support the overall story. Otherwise, it can look a little silly.
One of the quotes that I've heard is in regards to like musical theater, when dialogue isn't enough, it's music.
Yeah.
When music isn't enough, it's dance.
Right.
And that I feel like that quote really puts it in perspective of, okay, if it's too much to say in dialogue, it has to be sung.
Right.
And if it's too much to sing, it has to be done through dance to show it. And we were talking about his pre-show. One of the most unique choreographical positions you've been in was at Sight and Sound,
right?
Where they have a 180 stage. Do you know the square footage of their stage at all?
I just say massive.
It is gigantic. You can sit in the in the front rows of the seats and look to your left and there's stage, and look to the right and then there's more stage.
Yeah.
So what was it like choreographing for that big of a stage and for that big of a cast?
Yeah, at first it was completely foreign. It was very intimidating. There's different styles of choreographers and directors. Some who are very organic and will go in and sort of not wing it. They have an idea. Well, there's probably some who wing it also, but there's they might have an idea, but they maybe haven't. It's just the idea, and so they get
flow.
there and they kind of let's try this and let's try this. And there's times where I can do that, but not there.
Right? No, no.
So maybe with a smaller cast or a smaller setting, but there it was the only way I could succeed. There was to go in with my charts. They all knew that I had charts going in, but still on paper and X's all over the place because there's just too many people to try to go free flow to try to. So I was always planning and trying to put people in the best place to succeed and who would look good, next to like who's opposite on the bookends. I really thought it was very intentional about thinking of like where each person would look good, and where they would fit best and play to their strengths best. But it took a lot of time on paper. It took going into, when we were creating the shows, going and playing on the sets. So I'd go downstairs and work on the sets and see what were steps and where I could have people dancing and how they moved and again meeting with the directors to get all the visions of the shows. I would go try on costume pieces to see how they moved.
Really?
Yes, there's some great photos and footage I'm sure somewhere of me, floating around the basement and some of the flowing costumes, but it helps when because the time there too, it's like a machine. So I figured out pretty quickly that I never wanted to go in, and I always wanted to get it right the first time.
Right.
You don't want the actors sitting around going, well, is it this or is it this? Again, that's part of me having lived the actor experience, is knowing that their time is valuable. And that they want you to tell them, and they don't want there to be a lot of back and forth, and they don't want to be figuring it out in the 11th hour. So out of respect for the actors, I always try to go in with a plan that's going to be 90% right the first time. Might have to fudge it a little bit, might have to tweak a little bit here, clean a little bit there, change something here or there. But the bones of it are all pretty much right.
That is one thing I learned from performing my senior recital as a composition major and dealing with like the COVID thing during 2021 was a lot to deal with. I had original songs, original compositions, well, it's all my music, so it's all original. But I had theatrical acts that I had for my own musical, songs with like choirs and then like quartets and dance stuff. And oh my gosh, how much I wish I had actually like planned that out and told the people what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because it was a little bit of a train wreck. You wouldn't have known having sat down and watched it. But backstage, it was like, what do we do? What's happening?
Yeah.
The whole pre-rehearsal before was like, what are we doing? What's
Yeah.
happening this
Yeah.
time? It's like, oh my goodness, how much I thought. It's crazy how much you think you have control of a situation,
You're right.
and then it just zoom, gone,
Yeah.
and nobody knows what's happening.
Yeah.
So it's one of the biggest things I learned was you have to plan out everything, and you have to tell everybody well in advance.
Yep.
Communication is very important. For the choreographer, is it mainly only numbers, or do they also work with blocking?
I did a lot of work with blocking there. I remember doing it. I think it was when we were doing Moses. That the director and I were working pretty closely together. And there was just a lot of, even some of the scenes there are just, everybody's out there, and they all have to be placed somewhere, and the energy has to be, focused on where the storytelling is and all of that.
For those who don't know, blocking is where are the actors in the Pacific spot, and what are they doing? Are they exchanging information? Are they doing side conversations? Are they buying something from a seller, or stuff like that?
Yeah, and it tended to be a strong suit of mine was being able to play some of those larger scenes. So it wasn't uncommon for a director to say, I'm going to go talk to these to some of the principals down here. Can you go, make a picture up there and work on that a little bit, and we kind of divide and conquer and things like that. So it was always it's always a challenge, but really rewarding, a really rewarding experience. And trust me, it took a lot of time to figure out how to work that space there. It's not an easy space.
I don't envy the people. Did you ever have to worry about animals?
Oh yeah,
photography.
Absolutely. Constantly. Whether it's the actual animals or what the animals leave behind,
Right,
you're always worrying about it. You're always kind of putting in a contingency plan for what the actors need to do and if they need to get out of the way or something like that. So certain animals, or there's birds flying around. It's ridiculous the amount of attention, the amount of departments speaking into the shows there. But definitely have to think about the animals as well.
So is there ever if an animal does X, plan B? Or is it just keep going and try your best to avoid it?
Yeah, they do some safety protocol and things like that. They always want to make sure that the actors know kind of where to be looking and which animals, would potentially be temperamental.
Science Sound does a very good job with integrating the actors with the animals.
Yeah, they do a great job.
And they take really good care of their animals as well.
Absolutely.
But animals are always going to be unpredictable.
Right. So they train them, but there's always a rogue bird here or there or something like that. So they're always on their toes, always looking. They do take it very seriously, and they want to make sure that everybody's safe.
So what is one of the funnier moments from your career?
I just had this conversation with my company students the other night. I was trying to tell them to take a break and remember to not take themselves too seriously, because a lot of actors do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, I was sharing with them some moments from my career that at the time I probably took way too seriously, and looking back, they were hilarious. And I was like, why was I so serious about that? It was hilarious. If I saw it now, I would be in hysterics.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the most embarrassing one was on the national tour of A Christmas Story. Christmas Carol. The same one where I met my wife. And my wife and I were actually dance partners. We were the Dancing Dolls, which is just as creepy as it sounds.
Yeah.
It was two life-size dolls come to life to do a little dance in the opening number. And so I had like a little boy, a boy blue costume on, but our masks were just pure white. And the only thing holes that we had were around our eyes. But even that was like limiting. They were like really little eyes. So like you can't see too much through them. You can't see any in the peripheral. It's all just what's right in front of you. Mm. And so we're doing our dance number, and I had a little trumpet in one hand, and doing the dance number and leaps or kicks or whatever. And as an actor, the feeling of like stitches ripping. Oh, you just know that feeling, and you don't know how bad it is, but every actor knows that feeling of like something where like, oh, I think I popped a stitch, in my sleeve or something like that. This was in my pants. And I was doing all these turns or whatever, and I could feel that it was ripping. And it was basically, and I was like, I don't know how bad it is. And it ends with me doing like these fast turns. And so through the little eyes, all I could see was, imagine spinning in circles and seeing actors looking at you with this look on their face that is like, I'm going to lose it because you don't know what you look like right now. And the song ends with a frozen pose with the little trumpet like up to my mask mouth and my other arm at my side. And sure enough, my pants were split like wide open. Like front to back. They were split. And I had to stand there for another like minute or two before like walking off stage. Yeah, it was in Columbus, Ohio. I said to the students the other day, it's like that moment of like, where were you when this happened in history? It's like, where were you that day that you split your pants in front of 1,000 people? I was in Columbus, Ohio. And I'll never forget it. And that was one of those moments I couldn't get off stage fast enough. But luckily, it didn't happen again. They sewed my pants, and we were good to go.
Did you, what was one of the biggest blocks or busts that you ever had to deal with? Like, did you ever have to deal with rejection at all? Was that ever a serious thing for you?
It's a part of life for every actor, for every theater person. Again, going back to the conversation about it being such a subjective thing, rejection is just a natural part of what we do. Meaning we fail more than we succeed in theater. Right. If you're an actor, you fail far more than you succeed because you audition 10 times a day, 10 times a week, and you might get one gig. Mm-hmm. That's 10%. I mean, that's failing 90% of the time. Like, so when you think about the numbers, I actually tell people the numbers to try to encourage them and to realize that it's okay. Yeah. That is a natural part of this because most people succeed only 10% of the time. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things you have to learn about and embrace as part of the experience and not fear. None of us like it. And if the voice in our head tells us that it's not okay, and makes us doubt everything that we're doing. But if we can ignore the voice in our head, especially if it's the one looking backwards, we'll be much better off. So, I mean, so I don't have one specific time that I got rejected because there were too many to count.
Too many to count. Gotcha.
It was always there. It was always present. I've had horrible auditions. I've had horrible auditions where I've gotten the gig, and I've had amazing auditions where I haven't. It's kind of always the way it goes. You nail an audition, and you're like, I got this in the bag, and then you never hear from it. Right. And then you like trip and kick over a table in a dance call or drop someone in a partnering section, and you get a call, and you're like, wait, what? Right. Like, are you sure you have the right person? So it's a tricky and funny business, but. Rejection is definitely just a part of it.
So being a Christian now, this is something I like to ask a lot of Christians. What do you consider worship?
For me, it's a couple things. I mean, I try to be intentional about multiple types of worship in my life. I try to be invested and intentional about corporate worship. So I try to, of course, I attend church, and I try to make sure that is a reminder for me that I am part of something bigger than myself. I'm part of a body of believers when it comes to corporate worship, and so that's important to me to feel connected with others who believe the same thing. And then for an individual or private, for me, it's at the end of the day thanking the Lord and speaking to the Lord about my successes and failures of that day. I try not to go longer than a day without acknowledging that my successes are not from the Lord, and without acknowledging that my failures, I need help from the Lord, or I need direction from the Lord. And that to me is that's how I worship. That's how I make sure that that relationship is present and active, is that I don't let any success go longer than a day, because then I start to think of it as my own success. And if it's a failure, I think I start to think of it, anything longer than a day, I start to think of it as something that's wrong with me. And so that's kind of how I view worship in my life.
Cool. So, what is one thing that you know now that you wish you had known when you first started?
Everything.
Everything.
Absolutely everything. I talk to my students as if I've, they think I speak to them as if I've always known it. And what they don't know, and what I try to tell them, is that they're so much farther along than I was. They have so much more information at their fingertips. They're so much smarter than I was. They're so much more hungry for it than I was. Yeah, I was really lucky in my career. I really had great fortune and opportunity, and I consider it a success. Whether it was my work or just being at the right place at the right time, I don't look back and say there was a lot I would have done differently, or that I wish I would have known. I did it the best I could, and it helped form the person that I am now. Win, lose, or draw, like whether I was whether I was doing it well or doing it terribly. That's how you learn, and that's how you grow. So I know people like to hear, like, I know that's a common question anytime you're talking to somebody, but I'm still learning. I still don't know all the answers, and so I'm still learning what I wish I knew.
Right.
I'm still learning every day something that I wish I knew yesterday. And usually it's from people who are younger and less experienced than I am, that teach me those things. So it's not hopefully it's not a cop out to the question.
No, not at all.
But I'm really happy with my path, and with all that's poured into it. I continue to be proud of that path, and continue to not want to change it.
Yeah, it's super. There's I think it might have been Leslie yesterday that had said that her naivete had really helped her a lot, because had she had known what was the theater life, what was the film life, she would have never tried it.
Right. Absolutely.
So it not knowing is, you could just tell yourself, hey, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that the way I got to where I am now was unconventional. Like I said, I kind of tripped into it, stumbled into it. And who knows, if I had come in with a wealth of experience prior to that moment, it may have never happened. I may have given up or quit, but it was so fresh and so sort of impulsive that I just never stopped and looked back.
So what is one way that you have found your faith challenged throughout your career? Or since when you started having your faith?
Yeah, I mean, faith and theater aren't something that aren't two things that always go together. And again, I feel people in Lancaster don't realize how good they have it. When you're in I say this a lot when people come to me and complain about another theater company in Lancaster. Because if you're in anywhere else in the country, if you're in a town that has that one community theater, then you find those actors compromising a lot more of their own belief systems and core beliefs and things like that, because that's the only theater they have.
Right.
So if they want to do theater, they're going to have to give up something to do it. In Lancaster, that's not the case.
No.
So when somebody comes and complains to me about another theater, I say, stop complaining, because in Lancaster, you can find what makes you happy.
Right.
You can find it. So I'm like, don't work for them don't work for them again, and go find the one that makes you happy. But then I see on Facebook that they work there anyway. Later on. But yeah. So all that to say, in Lancaster, there is a place for both, and I feel like in the world there's a place for both.
Right.
You just have to work a little bit harder at it and find it, and you have to know. Like all things, you can't wing it. You can't go in unprepared to face a spiritual battle in any situation.
Right.
And theater, not excluding theater, you can't go into a theater that you don't know without being ready to fight. without being equipped with the armor and to tackle it with a strong hold on your belief system and your faith. And that's going to mean different things to different people.
Yep.
It's going to that boundary is going to be very different for different people. But you have to know what's important to you. You have to communicate openly. People are afraid to communicate. They get a contract and they think, I either have to take it or not take it, as opposed to negotiate. Even and it's still negotiating to simply say like, look. And I've had people, students or whatever, reach out to me and say like, how do I handle this? Like, okay, I got a role and there's a kiss in it, and I don't feel comfortable doing that. Then tell them. Tell them up front before you accept the contract and say, look, I'd love to just talk about this. And if the person entertains the conversation and understands, that means they're a great director or producer.
Right.
If they don't, you didn't want to work there in the first place. Consider that a blessing in disguise, or a blessing up front, I guess, because that
you know.
Yeah, and so there's always going to be challenges along the way, but the Christian world of artists has grown extensively over the last 10 years. Yes. Even in New York City, there's large population of Christian performers, which is so amazing. And I see them, they're finding ways to connect through even the different Broadway theaters. A buddy of mine who's doing Lion King right now, he posts on social media a group of actors that he's doing like a worship night with. And I was like, it's so cool. It's so refreshing, and it's so hopeful for these students who are saying to me, like, can I do both? Can I have both in my life? And for me to be able to point to what's happening in the industry and saying, yeah, you can. It might be a little trickier, but once you land and once you find yourself established and you get your network of other believers, it's doable. So, yeah, always a challenge, but definitely doable.
Being a Christian and working in society, at least in American culture as it stands right now, is one of the most difficult to navigate things.
Yeah.
And so it is important to realize that you can do it. You just got to find the right spots.
Right. Absolutely. You have to put yourself in the right spot. And you can't go in with you can't go in with 1 foot in the water. Like you have to know exactly what it is that you are willing to do and not do.
So what is one thing that you prepare your Christian students for if they want to enter the secular world of theater?
I say you have to have somebody that you can speak to as you're going out into it. Like you don't want to go into it alone. You have to have a mentor or a connection or someone that you can be consulting on a regular basis and saying, this is what the environment is. This is what I'm going through right now. If you're on your own, there's so much temptation to fall into that pattern as acceptable and then ultimately, be going against your faith and making compromises from your belief system. So I think accountability is a big thing, which is why I say, like, call me, let me know, text me if you have an issue, if you're going through an audition or whatever. But a lot of them have strong networks with each other already, and that's nice to see.
Yeah, one thing about Lancaster is it's relatively easy within the theater world to get to network.
Yeah.
Everyone knows each other.
We all know each other, yeah.
And everyone's super supportive of each other within the theater community. So it's really a special. I've never been to a place that's like that where I've been to places where everyone knows each other, but not so much supportive of each other.
Correct. Yep.
This is truly a special place where people from Sight and Sound like, oh yeah, Surf and Stage, I love them, or the Folded, they do great stuff.
Yeah.
And it's never more of a competition. It's just more of a community.
Yeah. I agree with that. It is. I love that. It's definitely on the performer side, and even some with the actually administrative or production teams side of things. I'd love to see that grow more. There's always times where I want to have more conversations and relationships with other artistic directors and other producing teams and things like that with the theaters, because the actors do a really good job of it.
Yes.
Of supporting one another and supporting each other in the different theaters.
That's something I want to grow into as this podcast grows, is to bring in different artistic directors of from Sight and Sound, Dutch Apple,
Right.
and Kavad. I would love to bring them in and just have a conversation of like, you know, what's your view of things? How do you do things? What are some strengths that you can learn from them? What are some weaknesses that you've noticed in other places?
Yeah.
And just really build a stronger community, because imagine all the good you could do. Say if you like put a music festival together, and then you have a song from Sight and Sound's new musical,
Yeah.
a song from Sermon Stage's production that they're doing, like even an original show, and then you have a Dutch Apple production, a Kavad production, and it's just a theater cabaret
Yeah.
of music. I feel like that would be awesome.
It would be, and there's been glimmers of it in the past. For a few years, the Fulton did an event showcasing some of or I think they had an event at the Fulton, but they brought in all the theater companies. I know we went and did a number for that. Yeah, I wish there was more of that happening. COVID really actually helped in some way the theaters kind of look at one another. There was a lot of communication during COVID, even like websites and publications out that would sort of connect a lot of the theaters, so that people could be saying like, well, what's everybody doing? You know, what are you learning from this? What are we learning from this? You know, a lot of phone calls to other companies and things like that to see if we could all get through it together. Yeah.
Well, if you'd be interested and I'm because these are bigger plans that I have in the future to put together festivals. If you'd be interested, let me know.
We'll do, yeah, in all the spare time, yes.
Yes,
but absolutely, we'd love to be a part of that in some way.
Yeah, all my future plans are like 2024, 2020, because people don't realize how long it takes to get stuff together.
Yeah.
Seasons are planned way in advance.
Right.
And like I already know Sight and Sound already has their next show.
Yeah.
A few shows a little lined up or in the process. So it is an immense amount of work, and it's so funny emailing or messaging like the Dutch Apple Theater. They were like, "I'm sorry, but we're way too busy," and I was like, "I know, I planned for this. I'm scheduling out into July."
Yeah, no, you're good at that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun and to reach out to different theaters and see what's going on, and it's a lot of fun to get out and experience the arts in a way that you really couldn't do 10 or so years ago.
No, there's more shows going on than there are days in the week.
Right.
Week, so it's
you have to pick and choose.
You do, yes.
And even with like open mics, you have to pick and choose which ones you have to go to, because there's just so many.
Right.
And it's awesome to see, but on some level it's also like, I wish there was less.
Yeah.
But it's ultimately very good. What is one thing? This is probably the last question I'm going to ask you. What is one thing that you really learned during COVID? Was it the community aspect? Was it something that changed for Sermon Stage after COVID?
No, I mean, other than the logistical, like
logistical
what we were putting out during COVID was all of the virtual content, which was something none of us were trained to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably goes industry wide or even worldwide, is how many businesses and professionals and people had to learn new ways of doing things. They had to learn new skills. So that was a big thing for us, as we were, basically three of us were producing these virtual concerts every week, and none of us, I mean, we all kind of knew how to turn the computer on and receive a video and put it in this. And, so a lot of the guys were much better at that end of things than I was, but it was still just three of us putting those together. So doing things we never thought we would do. But in terms of the start of the finish of COVID, it felt like Sermon Stage's mission was very equipped to handle it in our mission of accessibility. It was, how can we continue to reach our community? And coming out of it, again, it just reinforced the need for community, how much the arts were needed in the community. People longed to be back in the theater and back out into the real world and back out into entertainment and back out among among the community,
Right.
seeing shows together and things like that, things that we always took for granted. And so as we watched the numbers come in on the virtual performances and got letters and got emails and messages about how much people were struggling through it all, obviously people's mental health and things like that became really powerful and really important, intentional. So I think that's something that has come out of that whole season, was the sort of the country and society's take on mental health and the importance of it, and not ignoring it. So that's, again, something that I personally became even more invested in after that, in terms of my students and making sure that they were taking care of themselves, because it's hard for adults, but it was so much harder for young people. And
lost so much valuable time of their youth.
So I think we're still learning what came out of that season of COVID, but I think that a lot of it is just a nice refocus for everybody to say how important it is of what we do. We can forget how important theater is, or the arts are,
Right.
But it really is something that does bring people together and takes care of their mental health by challenging them and by giving them a break, maybe, and getting them out amongst other people and giving them some enjoyment and laughter that's needed.
Get some escapism. A little bit.
Absolutely, in moderation, but it's all very good. So it was just it was refreshing to welcome them back into the theater and to feel that joy of them returning to theater. And they're still getting there, but we're well on our way to the return of all of that.
Well, with that said, this has been an awesome time.
So fun. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to have you on again to talk about the stuff we missed out on. You can find Wally at Servant Stage. Their website, servantstage.org. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram, all the socials, and the upcoming shows, Newsies.
Yes, come see us a week from Friday. We open.
All right. Well, with that said, this has been This Story Podcast with Corey Rosen. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/thestory. Corey Rosen. That's CORYROSEN. You can follow us on Spotify. You search the same thing, The Story, Corey Rosen, and all streaming platforms. You can find us there. Soon we'll be uploading clips to YouTube, and we'll be there as well. So with that said, I hope you guys all have a great, wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.